Okay, so we want to show rulers for this. If you don't have them showing, you can either do Command R to get them or go to View and click Rulers so that it's showing. Next, we want to put guidelines, and we want to make the yes men here look just like it does on the poster. So we need a guideline on the left side and the right side because this is going to be justified type. Now you might end up moving them a little as you work on it, but just kind of guess for now about where they might be. And once you have the guideline, then the very first thing to do is to adjust the letter spacing. We want to open up the character panel, and to get to it, if it's not already open, go to Window, choose Character. It looks like this. Now we're going to adjust the spacing because right now between the T and the H and the H and the E and so on, the spacing is way too big. So to do it, highlight first the yes with your type tool, and then using Option and Shift buttons, press those both, hold your left arrow and start tapping those letters so that they're close to each other. Now if the spaces aren't exactly even, like on mine between the Y and the E, they're actually touching, so that's too close. So I'm going to just click in between them so that I have the cursor just flashing in there. And I'm going to hold my Option Shift and I'm just going to bounce the E over a little using the right arrow. So you can do that. If you need to individually move letters around, all you do, you don't highlight, you just click in between. Now notice what's happened here as we've done that. We have for our kerning button, we have -60 right now. And it's actually our tracking. So tracking is what's showing. There, it's kind of interchangeable though, kerning and tracking. It's really talking about the spacing between the letters. All right, now we're going to do the same thing for men. So highlight, Option Shift, use that left arrow and tighten it so that it's the same. Now the order that I'm having you guys do this stuff is the easiest way to do it. So you could go different order, but sometimes if you start to tighten up the line spacing, then it's harder to grab the letters. So I like to do the lettering first, and that way it's easier. You don't have to struggle to do it. All right, the next step is to adjust our font size. And we want the yes to fit within our two guidelines so that it's justified. So we're going to highlight it, and we're going to start dropping the font size down. And you can just guess. I'll put in 45 and see how that is. That's a little too small for mine. So I'm going to I'll make it up to maybe 47. And now that's pretty good. And then I'm going to do the same thing with men. So I'm going to highlight it and raise up the font size until it also touches the left and the right guideline. And just guess to get there. You kind of just go up a little higher each time until you get it right. Try to be as exact as you possibly can. So not just close to being justified, but exact. You want to be real perfect on it. Now to get the spacing between the lettering, like if you've got a little extra space, you can just click and you can use the arrows, or you could actually move the whole font probably too if you wanted. But I'm going to just click next to the M, and I'm going to use my right arrow and my Option Shift, and that's now perfect. And then I'm going to move the T over just a little too. So I want my T, the edge of my T and the edge of my M to be exactly lined up. I want the S and the N to be exactly lined up, as close as I can get it. Now the last part of the adjusting the spacing is to tighten up the line spacing. So I've got a giant gap between the yes and men. So I'm going to highlight men And I'm going to once again hold the Option Shift, and I'm going to use the up arrow to bounce it. This is what you want to do last, because once you've adjusted the line spacing, it can be hard to grab the letters. Especially when you go to do this one, the Take Back Your Life, be sure you do this step last. Otherwise, you're probably going to have to struggle to get it to be lined up and even. Alright, so once you're done with that part, we're pretty much finished with this section. The only thing that we need to do, if we want to try to go exact, which is kind of fun to do, we're going to change the color to a gradient, and we're going to put a little drop shadow on it, because the Yes Men on the movie poster has a drop shadow. So those are all layer styles. So double click on your layer. Let me scoot that over so you can see it. Oh, notice too that with your line spacing, you can see what you've adjusted. Here, I'm at 38 points where it was at 0 for that baseline shift spacing. So it's this one right here to get those to tighten up. Gradient first. So for the gradient, double click on the type layer for the Yes Men and get your layer style box up. We're going to do a gradient overlay. So go ahead and click Gradient Overlay. And you have to highlight the word itself, not just, don't just click the box. Now, going into the gradient, let's go in and let's pick an existing one. Let's pick the red-green one. And we're going to go in and we're going to edit it. So once you click, then click inside the gradient. Let me show that again. So I'm just going right into where the gradient is here. I'm clicking once. That gives me the editor. Click on your first box and sample the light part, or maybe let's sample the dark part. So sample the dark part of the gradient. So near on the left side where, the M for men or the T, click so you get that darker color. Then go to the green and this time sample the light color. So now we have it, but it's going in the wrong direction. So we just want to adjust the way it's laying. And to do that, you're going to use the gradient tool, and you're just going to draw along it to get the right direction. Let's see, actually, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not going to let me do that. Oops, hold on. Now we're going to have to set the angle, I think. Yeah. Okay, so to adjust your angle now, just change your angle, and you can just go ahead and rotate it until it looks the same. So you want the dark to be on the left, and it gets lighter as it goes to the right. Now it has a really nice light drop shadow on it as well. So we also want to go to drop shadow and set that on there. And I'm noticing that in this version in CS6, the order is different. Drop shadow used to be on the top of the stack, and now bevel is. But same deal, it's just a very light little shadow. And that's good enough for that very first one. So the second one is sort of the same deal, although instead of tightening our letters, we're going to be loosening those letters. Right? So we're going to have a little more space between them. And you might want to move your guideline just a bit, but we are going to be doing kind of the same deal. So for the Liam Neeson, we want to highlight that. And then we're going to hold the Option Shift, and we're going to use the right arrow this time, because we want his name to go all the way across until it touches the other guideline. And you can kind of look at the distance between the letters and try to, move your guidelines so that it looks about the same. I think that's pretty good. I might move my guideline just a little in. possibly. And so then you're ready for the next one. So I'm going to go and grab take now. And, you know, it's the same thing we just did, just a little bit different to get them to match up. Always do the letter spacing first before you start doing your baseline shift, because you're going to find otherwise that it's going to be hard to grab those lines. The B is not really close enough to my guideline, so I'm going to click in front of it and I'm just going to move it a little before I start to stretch these letters out. Now I'm going to move the K over. So you highlight, you hold Option Shift, and you use the right arrow. Now for unknown, I'm going to tighten it. And my type tool's being stubborn. Oh, unknown is on its own layer, that's why. Yeah, some of this is on its own layer, so be aware of that. Okay, so once you have that, for this one we don't really necessarily need to make our type bigger or smaller, although you could if you feel like you need to. But we're going to start tightening up our spacing now. So for lame Neeson, that's on its own layer, so that's pretty easy. We can just bounce that down a little bit once we grab it. And, you know, using the arrows is sometimes a nice way to do it. Just use your arrow keys so that you can move them just a little bit at a time. I'm going to tighten this up just one, maybe two. And then for the others, you're going to continue on. So you're going to go ahead and grab the type line, hold your Option Shift, bounce the lettering up. And this is almost touching this lettering. And then go grab the next one. Now we're not going to go for the masked effect on the picture. And I don't really care about the color on this one. You can leave it. Obviously, we're not going to make the lame Neeson white because then it would just go away on the white background. So once you get those so that the spacing is good and your alignment on both the left and the right is justified, then you're done. Just save it, last name, first name, EX21, turn it in.